Buonasera. Buonasera og benvenuti. Hjertelig velkommen til alle. Veldig hyggelig at dere fant veien på denne varme, fine junikvelden. Kveldens arrangement går inn i en serie med arkitekturforedrag som vi har kalt Architecture, Project, Territory and Relations. Direktøren og jeg har lenge tenkt at det hadde vært fint å gjøre noe nettopp med gjenbruk av gamle bygg. I Oslo popper det jo ene nye huset opp etter det andre, og veldig fint og flott det. Men det også noe med alle de gamle byggene som står tomme og ser litt triste ut, og det også fint å få et blikk fra Italia på det samme argumentet, eller samme temaet. Så i kveld så skal vi da få se ulike løsninger på gjenbruk av historiske bygg. Og på den måten så bygger vi også en bro, synes vi da, mellom Palermo på Sicilia og Oslo. Vi skal snakke om, ikke minst hovedsakelig 2 kulturbygg, som da omskapt henholdsvis fra et herskapshus i Palermo, sentrum, og da Norges første bank av arkitekt Grosch, som i sin tid bygget det for nærmere 200 år siden, der nå altså arkitekturmuseer har fått plass og blitt utvidet da ved Sverre Fehns tilbygg, eller eget bygg. Og dette da de 2 hovedargumentene, eller temaene for i kveld. Og fra Palermo har vi fått kunsthistoriker og kurator ved Palazzo Butera, Claudio Gulli, benvenuto. Han kom direkte fra Palermo i går, og har vært på besøk både Nasjonalmuseet og Arkitekturmuseet i dag. Han utdannet ved Universitetet i Siena og i Pisa. Han arbeidet ved maleriavdelingen på Louvre i Paris, og han har blant annet skrevet 2 kunstbøker om Leonardo da Vinci, og også forfatter av en bok om Palazzo Butera. Og det han som da kunst- og kulturansvarlig på Palazzo Butera, som vi da skal få vite litt mer om. Jeg sier ikke noe mer om det. Og til å snakke om byggene i Oslo, og da spesielt Arkitekturmuseet, men også andre bygg, så har vi fått arkitekt Martin Dietrichson. Velkommen til deg også.
Tusen takk.
Martin var ansatt i omkring 8 år hos Sverre Fehn, og jobbet tett med han i disse årene, og nå eier og partner i arkitektfirmaet Kima Architecture. Han har også bakgrunn fra Snøhetta og har deltatt i restaureringen av en rekke historiske bygg i Oslo som vi kanskje kjenner, de fleste av oss i hvert fall, som Sentralen, Telegrafen, Pressenes hus og Tollbodene. Men en av kveldens hovedpersoner faktisk en tredje person, og det deg, Alf Hovli. Hjertelig velkommen til deg også. Benvenuto. Alf snakker jo flytende 3 språk, så jeg vet ikke helt hvilket språk jeg skal snakke med han. Og ingenting av dette hadde blitt uten Alf, fordi vi på instituttet ble kjent med Alf for ganske mange år siden, da han jobbet på Norsk Form og Doga, og vi hadde mange fine samarbeid. Han den største ambassadør for italiensk kultur, og ikke minst da arkitektur her i Norge. Og det var han som kjente Claudio og Palermo, og det var også han som kjente deg, Martin. Så vi veldig glad for, Alf, at du fortsetter din seiersgang med å promotere italiensk arkitektur her i Norge. Og med på å bygge disse broene som jeg snakket om. Og da det Alf som skal ha en liten trekke litt i trådene i en liten samtale mellom Claudio og Martin på slutten etter at vi har fått sett disse presentasjonene. Først det Claudio, så kommer Martin, og så blir det da en liten samtale etterpå. So, I think I will leave the floor to you. I'm sorry speaking in Norwegian, but I do think you imagined what I said.
More or less.
So the floor is yours. Afterwards, Martin will come, and then Alf will lead a small talk between you architects. Okay?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you at first to the Italian Institute of Culture in Oslo for inviting me, for having this lecture and this discussion with you. I do not like to do monologues, I love to do dialogues, so at any point you can stop me and ask whatever you want, and at the end, of course, I think we are absolutely happy to answer to all the questions. Palazzo Butera is a very strange project, I would say, in Italy, because it never happened that two private people, two collectors, that have no ties at all with Sicily, because Francesca and Massimo Valsecchi, they lived in Milan and in London for almost all their life. When they were more or less 70 years old, they decided to come in Sicily for the first time in their life, and they discovered a place full of possibilities, I would say. And more or less by accident, they arrived to discover one of the great palaces of the city, facing the sea, 7,000 square meters, the palace of the first title of the kingdom in the 18th century, the princes of Butera. They ran a little bit Sicily, fighting against the vice kings because they came from Naples, and so there was always, let's say that this first title of the kingdom, these princes, were acting a little bit like kings. They were acting like rulers of the city and of the island. The Branciforti, those princes of Butera, they owned the 20% of Sicily in the 17th century, and so they managed to buy several parts of the seafront for building this palace that more or less in 40 years, especially in the 70s, 60s, it became the most important palace of Palermo. The terrace and the promenade down the terrace clearly explains this relationship with the city walls, because the promenade that you can see on the right is part of the city walls, is on the top of the city walls. And the palace stands upper. The palace is, in some sense, in our reading of the history, the palace works as a wall, as another wall. The palace implies that only the princes could see the sea, could have the terraces that were private and were upper than the civic walls. It's a sort of precise sign that this private power was higher than public power. What we wanted to do since the beginning was to completely reverse this idea and to let this private palace become public, giving access to, as much as we could, to all the spaces of the palace. And as you can see, since we opened in 2018 as a building site, because the palace has been entirely renovated, starting from 2016, ending in 2020, there has been a huge renovation involving more or less 200 people for 4 years. Almost every of the workers were, almost every of the workers was from Sicily, was Sicilian, so it was also an investment made for Sicily, I would say. The architect, the architect-in-chief, Giovanni Cappelletti, was the only one who came from Milan, because with Massimo Valsecchi they worked together in a couple of exhibitions in Milan. And so, together with the graphic designer Italo Lupi, there is let's say, a connection between Milan and Palermo for the architectural project and the graphic design project. As you can see, now this is our actual situation. This is the cover of the booklet we did. Me and Giovanni Cappelletti, we wrote this little guidebook because I would say that 80% of the palace is open to the public. There are 7 rooms at the ground floor, 3 rooms at the first floor, and 20 rooms at the second floor. So all the second floor basically is open to the palace, is open to the public. And there are no labels for the artworks inside. You only have this booklet for guiding you visiting the palace. As we do not want to become a museum, we do prefer to stay as a house, as a collection that slowly become public and slowly become visible. Since the beginning, the first thing that you can see is this mix of ancient and new, that is basically the theme of our talk today. And even with the architecture, we tried to let the palace become contemporary, even if we discovered with the restoration many of the volumes of the 18th century, because you have to consider that all these spaces were completely divided into mezzanines and rooms. But contemporary architecture has the power to reinvent some of the spaces, so this staircase, this glass and iron staircase, lead you on a mezzanine where this space has been designed specifically for hosting drawing exhibition and photo exhibition. And the same is valid for many of the spaces of the palace that have been treated with these iron and glass materials, as we always wanted to make clear what was new and what was old. So as the old palace is made of stones, of marbles, of frescoes, of stuccos, the new palace has to be visible and has to be signed by contemporary materials, let's say, that we identified in iron, glass, and in a specific design that is immediately recognizable. The same for some interventions that really qualify parts of the building, like the little tower that now is accessible thanks to this staircase. And from here you can see the wall bay of Palermo and the roof. The restoration of the roof is something that we are particularly proud, because if you look at really in the top right corner, there is a church, and there is the roof of a church that you can see in the image. It is completely flat, because it's not a restored roof. This is a redone roof. All the tiles have been removed, and the roof of the church has been remade. What we did was to remove all the part of the roof to create a modern structure that is invisible, and we replaced all the old tiles for maintaining it. The palace in the first years became a cultural center where exhibitions, talks, conversations, presentations of books have been made, and we decided to, once we finished every room, every floor of the palace, we decided to open only with the spaces, without any object inside. There is a story behind, because Massimo Valsecchi had a gallery in Milan, a gallery of contemporary art, that was active especially in the 70s, when he did exhibitions with Gilbert and George, with Andy Warhol, and with Gerhard Richter, and many other artists. Let's say that in the 70s, the gallery had a very strong activity, in the sense that there were 6 or 7 exhibitions per year, and then starting from the 80s, Massimo Valsecchi had more profound relationships with some artists. And these relationships are really long relationships as they arrive until now. And so all the artists with which he started working in the 70s, like Anne and Patrick Poirier, since the beginning they were involved in the project of Palazzo Butera. So basically, it's not only an architectural project, but there's also behind our project an artistic project, an artistic intervention, an artistic involvement. So since the restoration, that is very important in my opinion, the artist could come, see how the palace changed year after year, and design, draw, invent artistic interventions specifically made for Palazzo Butera. This is what they imagined for the first, this is what Anne and Patrick Poirier, two French artists, they worked a lot with Massimo Valsecchi, but also they did important exhibitions at the Centre Pompidou, at the MoMA, and everywhere in the world, I would say. This is what they imagined for the first courtyard of Palazzo Butera, that is now realized. Of course, everything is about the future of the city. We are trying to do something that in 2100, visiting Palermo, one can come and say, this is what people did in 2020. We're trying to leave something for the future of the city, and even in the imagination, for example, of this installation in the courtyard, you can see it, because Anne and Patrick Poirier, they thought to create a garden of sculptures that now you can't really see because the vegetation has to grow. But basically you will see these in 20 years, 30 years, and of course in 100 years, still better. Maybe the most important intervention is this Gothic room that has been the center of our interests since the beginning of the restoration. It looked quite ugly because this is a photo of the 70s of Palazzo Butera. You have to imagine that Palazzo Butera was a school, so it was just the secretary room of the school, and many parts of the palace has been several damaged during this time. And we were, of course, fascinated by this wooden structure that is original. This I discovered in the documents. It's of 1811. The name of the architect is Carlo Kenchi. He's an architect born in the 1740s, so it's really someone who was taught during the Enlightenment era, and you can see it in this last creation he did. It's like to understand that the Middle Ages in Sicily mean a connection of cultures, of Arab, Gothic, and Norman, of course. And this is what Anne and Patrick Poirier did for this room. They designed these glasses that do not reflect anything. They just create a slow movement atmosphere and also a very soft atmosphere. And the same is for the carpet that is inspired basically to the frescoes in the ceiling. And this is what we would like to do for every room of the first floor. The first floor is the most beautiful floor of the palace. It's not all open to the public. For example, this is part of the private apartments within the palace. This is the last phase of the construction of the palace. We are in 1716, 65, 66, and the ceilings are no more in fresco, but they are on stucco. And all these wonderful carved mirrors are made by a great wood carver who is called Girolamo Carretti. Let's say that Sicily is taking its place, in some sense, in this atlas of decorative arts that we are building, because the collection of Massimo and Francesca is about contemporary art, but also decorative arts, old master paintings, porcelain, glasses. It's really an encyclopedia that tries to do research at every time and to find which are the peaks of the European civilization within the last 3 centuries, I would say. And every space, this is probably the most beautiful space of the ground floor, every space for us now can host specific artworks created or artworks both specifically for the spaces. This is, for example, a painting by Tom Phillips, a British painter of our days, that we bought specifically for this room of the ground floor. Here I show you how the palace changed in a room. Let's say this is the library that is every day open to the public, and how the installation of existing artworks in the collection, so this is Frans Floris, a Flemish painter of the early 16th century. This was installed as a permanent work of art by Giovanni Cappelletti, who designed all the display, also not only the restoration, but even every single artwork has been displayed by him. And this is one of the few cases that we do not want to move anymore, because all the rest of the palace has been created for a dynamic display and for a very easy changement that you can always do in the display. In this case, we wanted to fix a point in all of our display. And in some sense, this relationship between the collection that inspired the artist, because Anne and Patrick Poirier already knew the collection of Massimo and Francesca. They were friends since the 70s, so they were on the same path since the 70s. So it was easy for them to understand how to declinate their art to the palace, to the city, because this is a project that Anne and Patrick Poirier did on Palermo, on the antiquities of the archaeological museums, with these rubbings on paper, on Japanese paper. They use always since the 70s for taking memories, taking postcards, taking notes from the cities, from the places that they are visiting. I would like to introduce you to another artist that is very important for us, who is David Tremlett. This is, for example, what he did in the last, it's one of the most important projects he did 10 years ago, more or less. It's the new entrance at the Tate Britain. And David Tremlett was also involved since the beginning for filling a couple of, more than a couple, let's say, several empty ceilings of the palace. So we wanted to do something that could stay together with the frescoes of the 18th century, and we asked David Tremlett to create new ceilings specifically designed by Giovanni Cappelletti. So where you don't have the frescoes, now you have these wall drawings by David Tremlett, especially in the second floor, where you have 20 rooms with frescoes or with the ceilings painted by Tremlett. And the same is for the entrance to our offices. But these palettes of colors couldn't be done, in my opinion, without a real understanding of contemporary art and a real, I would say, Massimo is someone who could also be considered an artist. And this is a project that has been made with the mind and the eye of an artist, even if his way of doing art is collecting and deciding how to display objects. For this reason, I think we always need Gilbert and George for, let's say, do not give too much importance to the frescoes of the 18th century that could become too heavy for, and as an identity also, I would say, and also the great old masters that now are in Palermo, like the Crespi or the Ghezzi here reproduced, are part of this gift, I would say. I want to stress a little bit more this way of connecting the palace with the public walkway. Here you can see all the phases of the restoration and also how we are trying to do something for the public, let's say. All the vegetation that you can see in the last photo has been bought and planted by us for creating a garden that basically starts from the public space and goes into the private terrace. But also what is very important is to create another entrance to the museum, because from the public walkway you can access via this gate that at the beginning it could seem a very strange gate, but it was used for creating this staircase, and so the access from the public space to the cafeteria was created since the beginning as a new way of reading the palace, because we wanted really to transform what was historically a wall into a gate for the neighborhood, a gate for the historic center. And this is specifically done with the new entrance from the promenade, from the walkway, from the public walkway on the civic walls. So for this reason we created this cafe that is basically another entrance to the palace, because this is not the first entrance that you have on the street. As I know I don't have to take too much time, I'm going slowly toward an end, because I would like to spend a couple of minutes on how this project is possible, showing what was this gallery in Milan that Massimo Valsecchi had since the 70s, that also represents for us a little bit the future, because the gallery has been closed, let's say, with a wall drawing by David Tremlett in 2001. A wall drawing that was conceived for being also slowly destroyed with time. You can compare a photo of 2001 to a photo of 2015 for understanding how this is already happening. Because Milan was the place in which Massimo and Francesca tried to do the same project for almost 20 years, trying a dialogue with the municipality, with the university, because it's really something that is done with a vision for the city, but also for the education. And in some sense, to share knowledge and to share the possibility of doing research on the objects of the collection was very important for Massimo and Francesca. But since they did not arrive to find an agreement with the municipality in Milan or the university in Milan, they decided to come in Palermo. And so for this reason, Milan, in some sense, it has been a little bit frozen. And now it's slowly arriving the time in which we go in Milan and gather what we will do in the future, because in this gallery there is also the archive. And I would say the world of a contemporary gallerist is without an end, I would say, if the case is the one of Massimo Valsecchi. So many important artworks of Claudio Costa, who is an incredible artist of the 70s, could arrive in Palermo quite early. And also the other chapter that I think it could be interesting for you to have a little bit an idea is the house. Francesca and Massimo were living in London from the 80s to 2015. These are the photos that have been made before dismantling this house, because this house does not exist anymore. Everything that was in this house went into two museums in England, the Fitzwilliam Museum in Cambridge and the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford. And then everything arrived in Palermo in 2020, more or less between 2019, 2020, 2021. So we really opened to the public as a final display in May 2021. Here you have the lawn at the Fitzwilliam Museum and the lawn at the Ashmolean Museum. And this is the final result, I would say. All these rooms at the second floor are every day open, and the public is starting to come, because we had 20,000 visitors in the first year. But it's not something that is, the purpose is not to make money with the tickets. If this was the purpose, Francesca and Massimo, they would never have decided to come in Palermo. They would go in Switzerland or in the United States, where if you have a collection like this and want to do something, there are only red carpets for you. The real purpose is to engage another time, maybe to find in Palermo what they couldn't find anymore in London. The London of the 60s or of the 70s was probably not so far from the Palermo of today, a city full of energy, full of artists, full of things happening, and not normalize the city. And the London of today is completely different of the London of the 60s and of the 70s. So probably the right place in which you can share what is a private collection, what interest in British design of the 19th century, of contemporary art, of Italian old masters, of German porcelain. Probably the right place is Palermo, where this mix of cultures has always been perceived as a possibility of encounter, a possibility of creating layers of culture. As since the Middle Age, I would say that we are used to this kind of people coming, not really invading, but contributing to our culture. Again, the wall drawings by Tremlett are particularly important for the second floor, because here there were two frescoes that were destroyed in the 1922, and so Tremlett had to do something stronger than in the rest of the palace. And the last rooms are these two. I mean, the last three rooms of the palace have been completely designed by artists. So in this case, Tremlett again, who redesigns a corridor that was really not beautiful before the restoration, and Patrick Poirier, who created the last room of the exhibition of the palace. There is, I would say, a meditation room where everything is about the relationship between white and white. There are words in the walls and in the ceiling. It's hard to see from the photographs, but basically this is the last room of the palace. And it's also a way to reconnect with the beginning, with the first installation of the courtyard that I showed you before. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, my name is Martin Dietrichson. I'm an architect, and I've been working together with Sverre Fehn for 8 years. I was educated from the Oslo School of Architecture in 2000. Had about 5 years at Snøhetta, and then Sverre Fehn. And I'm going to talk mostly of the Museum of Architecture and the period, this 8 years together with Fehn. And then I will continue a little bit of our works after the period with Sverre Fehn, from so Fehn from 2000 till 2008, and then up to now it's Kima architecture. As you all know, Sverre Fehn is one of the most famous architects in Norway. He called me when he was 76 years old, and he was actually working by his own. He had 2 employees working together with him for 15 years, but they have decided to start it up themselves. And at this time, 1999, 2000, the Norwegian government, by Statsbygg, they decided to actually build the Architectural Museum. And also the board of Gyldendal, the publishing house, have decided to create Gyldendalhuset, which is a quite huge building in the central of Oslo. And Sverre Fehn, 76. And at that time, we were a group of young architects. I started, and then we have Marius Maubert. So we had 1 or 2 years, just the 2 of us, together with Fehn. And then we had to get in more people, and we used quite a long time to get the right people. And yeah, Christopher, Alexander, and Inge. We were around 30, and Inge was 40, so quite young at that time. And I think we managed to create some kind of a group and surroundings around Fehn that he was able to still create and work as good as he could with architecture the last 8 years. Yeah, just these pictures, you know them. This is Hedmarksmuseet, and this is the pavilion in Venice, and this is the photo museum in Horten. If you look into the museum, this is when we started up. It was 2 buildings. This one, which is the old Norwegian bank in Oslo, made by Hans Christian Grosch in 1820, 1823. They were in the building for about 60 years. And then they removed, and the Norwegian archives entered the buildings, and they did this extension over here. So when we started, it was this connection of these 2 buildings. And here you see the pavilion that we did. When we enter the building, it looks like this. Fehn, he was, I think he entered the building for 1 or 2 times, and he got quite sad. I mean, he thought it was better to sit in his atelier and work with the project there. And me and Marius, we entered this building for almost every day for many years. Beautiful building with brick and very nice plaster works and so on, and a garden in the back side of the building. We started to take down the floors. The second floor, it was even worse. I mean, it has been built over many years, so it kind of stuck together. So we tried to get back to the original. I look fast through this building. Here you have the foundation, and we have to do a lot of work to get this building great again. The first floor we found actually an old brick floor that we decided to recreate. We took up the floor and started up from the bottom with a new floor, but and exactly the same as it was in the 80-20. Yeah, these are the floors. This is the second floor. When we look down on the walls, these are 50 centimeters thick brick walls. Yeah, in the first floor, new openings. So at the time, and suddenly the building started to breathe again. This was from the extension. We took down one floor to get this double height area. This was meant for a permanent exhibition, and the pavilion morphed for a skiftende utstilling. Yeah, works like this. We were working for about 3 or 4 years. And a little bit into the pavilion. This is the ground. This is the foundation for the pillars. And here you see the section of the building. Grosh building to the right. The walls in the first floor. What we did was to create all the techniques on the lofts, both on the Grosh building and on this building on the side. And we took all the techniques through here, enter the roof, and we go down like in this middle wall, and we enter all the walls from the top, but you couldn't see any technique at all. This was in a time where we were doing a lot of models, physical models, and also sketch and drawing by hand actually. But also we're starting with the digital drawings. Fehn himself, he liked mostly the best when we're doing the hand drawings. But the pavilion we very much it was created with physical models. So all the proportion, how we should do the curving in the roof construction and the walls outside. This is we have used 3 materials. It's concrete, wood, and glass. Fehn himself, he wanted that it shouldn't be a border from inside and out. So in the beginning we started just maybe it should be a building which was outside. And then they come up with this idea of working with a glass facade, and it should only be glass. No steel in the facades at all. Here we have the concrete outside, which is in a way extend the room. And the roof, which is quite easy, a simple concrete construction. Also doing, some of you know Fehn, he liked to see the drawings in one-to-one. So we had a blackboard when we were testing out the bricks and the sizes of everything in detail. Yeah. Or technical drawings like this, we had to, Fehn was, we had to work with absolute everything. Yeah, some pictures from the site when it was coming up. This is the column. 4 huge concrete columns where we took all the technique inside. The roof construction, how we construct the roof, all the steel in the roof. This is actually a shell of 12 centimeters, so it's quite thin. And we took down the form after 3 weeks, and then we have this beautiful curved concrete construction from outside. And here you have the concrete walls on the outside. Yeah, working all over the place. These are mostly, we have, it was many drawings, but these are the main drawings. This is, you have the floor down here. It's kind of one huge platform, which is 350 square meters. Lifted from the ground, this is 60 centimeters. And you have lighting under here to lighten up the walls, which is all the way around. And then you have the quite complex roof detailing with the glass, which is completely fixed. And then you have the concrete construction, which is actually moving a little bit down and up. 2 centimeters down and 2 centimeters up. So we have to have all these leaded constructions. So it's actually movable, this glass. Yeah. Testing one piece. The fan wanted this to be one piece of glass. So this is actually 225 and it's 6 meters tall in one piece. At that time it was the biggest glass you could get in one piece in Europe. And here you see when it was placed on the pavilion. You have the size of the people and it's 6 meters tall. It was actually placed in about 10 days and then it was finished. And here you get the feeling of Fean's idea of just using glass, that you shouldn't have, the nature should be in a way a part of the space in the room. Yeah, inside the building, reconstructing, taking up floors from above and plaster works. This is the brick floor that we placed down again. This is actually from Denmark, so it's new brick, but this is a picture taken for a couple of years ago, and now it looks like it's 100 years almost. Yep. Yeah, work like this, pine floors in the second floor. All these pines, this is about 8 meter long elements. We were also doing all the detailings on the furniture in the museum. Yeah. Inside, this is in the second floor. This is the main entrance that we found some sketches and some drawings of from Grosch, and we reconstruct this room exactly as it was in 1823. Yeah, some pictures of the museum inside. Here you have the brick floor, new elements, the glass. This 3 or 2 different kind of materials. The entrance of the pavilion. At the same time, Fean and the 5 of us, we were working with also with this publishing house. I show you some picture of this. So the 5 of us, we were doing both actually. This is 9,000 square meters, so it's a little bit wider, bigger, but it's mostly a new building. So in a way, it's a little bit easier. We took down 3 buildings inside, and it's actually a new building placed inside. Here you have the section, also very few materials. This is concrete construction, over lighting from here and lighting from the side. We made a huge model in 1:50. I think it was very important to get the styre, the board in Gyldendal to actually take the decision of that we're going to build this. Here you get the feeling of the space. The main room in the publishing house. The overlights, these are 3.4 meters and it's almost 4 meters tall from the top. And when it's finished, it's this kind of atmosphere in the room. This is an old building which Gyldendal, they have a strong. It has been in the backyard actually, so we took it down and we replaced it, but at this time inside the building. Today there is a small gallery inside here, and there's a huge meeting room up here. Yeah, some pictures when it was finished. Quite difficult concrete work. The last picture, Fean was 82, 83 or something, and he was at the opening at both the museum and Gyldendal. For us, it was really good. I mean, we were so young when we started. We were 30, we hadn't done anything. So the five of us, we managed to work together and fulfill his these two projects. It was a good feeling that we managed actually to do that. I'm not going into the details of this project, but just that you see what happened these years afterwards. It's still the same people, the three of us. That was the last group around FEM. We started up in 2008, and we had an agreement with FEM that when Gyldendal and Architectural Museum was finished, we started up by ourselves. Yeah. Now we are 22 architects. We are the founders, the three of us in the middle. And we are mainly working in the center of Oslo, with buildings like, we have the museum down here, and all the way around Centralen, Telegraph Building, an extension of the Norwegian Theatre, and Peace Prize Center over here, and yeah. So this is actually, our office is here. So we can walk around and with all these buildings. It's actually amazing. Some pictures of Centralen. It's a cultural building. From the beginning it was a bank. And we transformed it into a cultural project. Now it's people working with the music and the theater and social innovation. We took all the parts of the building that was reconstructable, like the main entrance. I mean, if you look at the interior, you found a lot of these kind of spaces. And we reconstructed this as it was from the beginning. We made a huge model in 1:50. And here you see, this is the Marble Hall and some other spaces that was taken, reconstructed actually. And in other parts of the building we took down as much as we could, and we got down to these really basic construction elements, and we decided that maybe these things could be combined with these areas, and you have this kind of contrast. There was a lot of patterns in the building, which was interesting, and we said maybe we just could leave it like it is. Some new elements, a new staircase, a new elevator, and so on, and you get this kind of atmosphere in the buildings. Yeah, and now it's filled with music and children and food and wine, and they are open at 6 o'clock in the morning and open till 2 o'clock in the night every day. Custom House, also down in the center. All buildings from 1850, 1800, and we were doing a new construction in between. Here you have some old buildings. The old buildings are almost looking the same as today. Same as Centralen, we enter the buildings and find as much quality as we could in the buildings. Brickworks, beautifully detailing some old glass structures and so on. Here we have the two buildings and a new pavilion that connected the two. And now you have this kind of atmosphere inside the buildings. I mean, you have the old construction, you have old flooring with new floors, and new stairs, and this old together. Now it's the headquarters of the what is called the custom. You have it here, office for the director of Norwegian Customs. It's 250 people. Tollboden. Yeah. Yeah, and this is the new access to the building. It's a completely modern structure, but I think in a way it fit very good together with the old buildings. So this is the main entrance. Now you can go enter the two other buildings from the side. Two more buildings. The Telegraph building, which is a huge block in the center of Oslo, is 30,000 square meters, built by Arneberg and Paulsen in 1924, and with an extension of Nils Holter in 1966. You have this, which is one of the corner of the building, and extremely many beautiful details in this building. We have been about 10 architects working on this building for about 4 or 5 years. The drawings of Arneberg and Paulsen. This was one of the illustrations in the competition. It was a competition in 2016 that we won. We decided to do as little we could with the facades and do openings at the ground floor where it was possible. And then we were looking at some kind of extension on top of the building, but that's difficult. But this was a solution that we started up with. Here you see the section. It's a plan drawing and a section. It's an atrium, and it's quite technical, but there you have the section and the plan. Now this building is looking like this. You have a 25 meters tall inside space and new connections, communications line inside this space, and also in the other atrium. You have remarkable working areas with almost 4 and 5 meters under the roof, combined with the original interiors that we took care of as good as we can. Good. Yeah, a combination of the old and the new. The last building is the press house, just finished 1 year ago. It's a smaller piece, it's 5,000 square meter. It's actually two buildings. It's a typical bygård in Norwegian. So this is one of them, and this is the other one. This is a section model of the building. It's 200 people working here. And in the middle there was a storage with many floors and 3 floors here. So it was something very difficult in this area. We decided to take down the floor and leave the construction inside and make a new overlighting in top. This was the backyard, and we also here decided to make overlighting and make the backyard inside. And then now you have all these people working around, and you have it's possible to look through the building in all directions. This is one of the atrium. So this is actually this space. The picture is taken from here, up here. You have a wooden construction in the roof, and all the bridges and the stairs are hanging from the roof, like this. The first building is taken from the ground floor, looking straight up. So this is actually the roof in this old backyard. The last atrium is this. Here you can see the floor was here, here, here. Very compact and yeah, veldig tett og trangt på en måte. And we took everything down, and then we create this overlight in the middle of the building. Yeah, this was actually my last picture. So, yeah, in a way, I think the 8 years together with Fien, we managed to learn a lot from him, and we have just continued working with passionately with architecture, I think, and having really, I mean, it's hard work, but we're having a really great time. It's fun. Yeah, thank you.
Palazzo Butera forsøg.
Ja, det gjør det.
Kan du fikse det? Se mettiamo la prima pagina, la prima foto del palazzo, questo come background.
While he is doing that, I must say that it's a very nice collaboration with the Institute of Italian Culture we have here for many, many years. In fact, the connections between Palermo and Oslo is more than 1,000 years old, but now in the recent 16 years old we have in our circles here, we have renewed this connection between Palermo and Oslo, and I hope that this will be another step in a way where we could celebrate this collaboration. And Eva, is you that sitting back? No. But because we started this 16 years ago with a very important initiative or connection, which was that the director of the Italian culture here, Lidia Ramogida, she had a friend in Sicily who was in charge of Regione Sicilia di cultura. And per questo è una cosa grande. And we did, and we had. I came there, and then this man there in the Regione Sicilia said, "This is a nice project. Palermo, Oslo, 2 cities in the outskirts of Europe, but I have 20,000 euros, but you have to use it before Christmas, because then I quit." But that is a story, and it has been developing this nice adventure. And when you come to Palermo, you see three marvelous buildings. One is Butera. The two others are Palazzo Chiaramontesteri and Palazzo Abatellis. And they are restored in the 60s by Carlo Scarpa, who was one of his biggest admirers was Scarfe. So when he made this museum at Hamar and the museum installations in the historical sculptures, you can see that he was very much influenced by Carlo Scarpa. So there are still things to dig into in this modern story of architecture. Did you really? Did he mention Scarpa sometime?
Yes, often. Often.
So what did he say?
I mean, we were looking at books and the detailings, not every day, but often. All the time when we were working on interior, we were going a little bit looking at Scarpa.
Yeah.
But Walter Gropius once said that the most beautiful project he was Palazzo Batellis. The Nordic love with the context in which Scarpa was operating was also very strong. And Scarpa is the greatness of Palazzo Batellis is that it's a marvelous way of putting the Gothic architecture at the center. And at the same time, what Scarpa does is of course not invisible, but it does not pretend to be visible.
Yes, there are so many thoughts that comes up when we hear these two presentations, and there has been a change in European architecture the last 30 years. 30, 40 years ago we tore down buildings and we made new buildings. Nowadays it is a different situation. Now the first thing we have to do is to find out what is possible to keep or to renew or to reinforce for the future. But what do you think, Martin? Are we still tearing down too many houses in Norway? Because we build quite a lot of new buildings, so it's a temptation to tear down the old ones. What is the situation now, you think?
I think it's, as you say, I mean, you see differences just the five last years. In a way, we are often getting into the buildings, and we first start to look at what can we do with them. What are the qualities? What are the possibilities? So that's one thing, but I also think more and more we are looking into it. What can we, is there any possibilities, not just doing renovation or just take care of it, but can we do something more out of it, but not do too much in a way? But I mean, you see a change with all, especially young architects. They have a focus on what we already have built and what we can do with it.
So in Palazzo Butera you have had so many wonderful rooms, very much to take care of, all the paintings, the ceilings, and the colors, and the stucco, and everything. So it must have been a continuous dilemma during the years, what to keep and what to renew. And I have been told that you also wanted to have a modern element in connection with this palazzo. Is it possible that you will have a modern component, or is it so that you find it not necessary?
We absolutely fight for having as much as possible contemporary architecture. We strongly believe that contemporary architecture in historic cities needs to exist in a great interaction, in a great integration. That is what you have been showing us 10 minutes ago. It's just a matter of quality. As you were saying, it's not that everything of the history has to be maintained. Only if it is of quality and if it gives us very important information about history. Because quality is not just about art, it's also about history. So if it's an important building for our history, in which we believe and in which we want to, this is universal, it's not Norway, it's Italy, it's everywhere.
I see.
And it's a matter of discussion. It's not that the private things are different of public things, because they make all part of the same identity, of the same history. So I strongly believe that contemporary architecture already now has all the competencies for managing, as well as we can see, this kind of situation. There is a little bit a fright about it, but great architects in the 20th century have shown how great our culture could be in integrating the new and the old.
One of the main ambitions with buildings in the center, even if they are old and monumental and they have to be renewed in some or another way, is to open up, in a way, to open up to get access for urban life, or to be inviting, because many of them originally were closed, being enough for themselves, all that. And you showed us this project with the entrance between the two buildings, which really changed the situation in that area. But if you look at the Museum of Architecture, you have this steep staircase and this original door, which is not very inviting and which is not very opened up. But this is now 20 years ago. Do you think that they would have solved this problem in another way if it should have been done today?
To be honest, we tried to do something with it for 20 years ago. Fern, he wanted to make a slow ramp up to this entrance to make a much more open entrance. And at that time we were struggling with what is it called, Riksantikvaren. They said no. So we had this slope and a staircase to the entrance, but it was actually impossible to do. It was one meeting that Sverre Fern, he left the meeting. But we couldn't do anything about it. So we had to use the original entrance. And I think that was okay, but maybe it should be possible to make it in another way that is more. And now it's a little bit difficult to enter actually, which is the main entrance.
You are a little bit more happy with the entrance in Butera because it's from the time where you had to access it with a horse and a wagon, so it has to be big. But so it's in a way it's an open situation in Butera. But you have had the ambition of to open up and to have impact on the urban life or the social life or the cultural life in that area or in the city. Have you seen some results of that ambition by now?
Yes, of course. We have already seen that the project is working. Basically, it's still really early for saying how much we succeeded. And normally it takes 5 or 10 years for a museum for really understanding if the project can be considered successful. I think already we see that some of the things that we were thinking at the beginning, so that the courtyards could become public squares, and that the relationship between the terrace and the promenade could change, and this is something that you can do and that you can really understand when you do concerts, lectures, theater, and now I'm thinking screenings of movies. This is the real way in which we involve the city and also the public coming from abroad. The activities that could not be think by an architectural studio, of course, are the real life of a place like Palazzo Butera, and so as it is not limited to exhibitions, because for the exhibitions we are seeing that it works really great. But as the ambition is higher, is to really involve the city in educational activities, in workshops with the university. I would say that the architectural projects in this case do not find a real end. It's going on, and you always have to change something because you have to adapt to a world that is changing. And in some sense, the experience from an architect go to another architect and to other, and so you only need an exchange with architects in thinking your space and your place, because you can't stop thinking at it. And in some sense also I would say it will never be solved. It will always be a challenge for architects and curators, I'd say.
The normal situation for architects is that you work with a project and you have a certain amount of money and you have to do it, to finish it within some time. And when you're finished, you have no influence.
Yeah.
And you hope that the owner is an ambitious man or woman. But here,
Completely different.
completely different, because those who have paid everything, they still live in the house. And they hopefully are ambitious on the projects, on behalf of the project. And I have heard, you told me, and Massimo also told me, that the project in the Palazzo next to Butera will be something new.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something?
Yeah, of course, with pleasure. I would add that also the architect live in the palace, Giovanni Cappelletti. There is not. I mean, it's a great resource because at every problem that you have, there is the architect. I mean, the architect is the vice president of the foundation. That I find extremely smart to have continuously a presence. Palazzo Butera, the next door palace, is other 1,700 square meters. This will become a study center. We are now fighting for having all the permissions because it takes a lot of time, and then the building site will begin, and we hope that in 2 years, 3 years, depending on the delays that we are experiencing. The palace will have a sort of head, as the body, let's say, is exhibition spaces, people visiting the exhibitions. This head, Palazzo Butera, will be students, rooms for conferences, rooms for studio, for research, and 6 mini apartments for scholars coming from abroad and staying 6 months, 1 year for studying what we have and also what they can find in Sicily. We are already doing residencies in Palazzo Butera, and this is something that is really working good because we have strong partnership, I would say now, with the Oxford University, with the Swiss Institute in Rome, the French Institute. And so as we are seeing that this works, we want to increase this part of our project in building a study center, a center of research in Palazzo Butera that is completely connected with Palazzo Butera at every level, even at the level of the terrace. And also the cultural life will be joint, let's say.
And also what is important, which I really appreciate, that you will concentrate also on old manufacturing,
yes,
old professionals in reconstruction buildings. So the experiences from Butera will be spread to other projects in the city because it's a great need, because all these handy people are old.
Yes, this is a very important point for us because I would say that Massimo and Francesca, they were completely changed by the restoration because they could understand that Sicily have a couple of things that are really impressive. One of these is craftsmanship that is still of a very high level, not in Palermo, because Palermo, as many big cities, have lost a lot of competence in craftsmanship. But in the little countries and in the little cities, let's say, where already in the last 40 years there have been renovations, restorations in the historic centers, there are really good competencies on this. And so all our craftsmen do not come from Palermo, they come from Sicily, from little centers of Sicily where the marble tradition is still strong, the stone making is still strong, the iron little enterprises are strong, the glass, and so everything has been handmade, I would say. And this is something that you immediately see once you enter Palazzo Butera, and this is something that, in our opinion, can really change the future of Sicily, because if there is a sort of investment in education in this area, you can also export this experience. You can also export this craftsman, because in Europe there is a lacking of this. Massimo, who knows London really good, he said that in London, for doing something like this, it would take, I don't know, 20 years, not 4 years. And in Rome, it's the same. In Milan, it's the same. It's because you already have the craftsmanship, and so immediately they arrive to do what you ask, and they don't have to redo that because it's not beautiful. It's beautiful at the first time. And it's something that you also learn in some sense. As an architect, I mean, all the solutions that we found for the restoration were not simply designed by the architects and given to the craftsmen. They were a sort of exchange.
That's good.
Great. I think we have come to almost the end here, but I would like to end it with giving the words to these two gentlemen and to ask Martin, did you get some thoughts about the Palermo situation while you was talking? And afterwards, did you have some thoughts about the Norwegian architectural situation which you can share with us? So, Martin.
First of all, it was really interesting. And I think that you are saying right now about the way of working with craftsmanship and so on is very interesting, because we see it in Norway when we were working with our project. It's really difficult to get craftsmanship and good workers and get the detailing in a right way or in a good way. So we are always looking at small areas where people actually can do great work, even if it's woodwork or with whatever actually. So the historical around Sicily and how they work with buildings today, I think it's really interesting.
So you think it could be some learning points here?
Absolutely, absolutely.
No, it was for me absolutely interesting what you've shown, and also visiting today the Museum of Architecture. I have to say that here there is, I can see immediately there are very fast changes in this city that I mean in the last 20 years a lot has been made, and I can't imagine how Oslo will be in the next 20 years. as you used to question, I try to give an answer. But I think that many things Palermo could learn from Oslo also. I mean, I've seen a lot of gardens inside this city that are hidden, but basically they are normal, and not also I would say the areas, the green areas that cover a little bit all the urban areas is something that we as Palermitan should really learn as we were talking about it.
That means in the coming years, we will try to continue this collaboration in the field of architecture and art and culture. So, and I hope you two will contribute to this. So everyone, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was so interesting, both of you, and thank you all. It was so interesting to how you led the conversation and still building bridges between Norway and Italy. So that's very interesting for us. That's one of the main reasons we think why we're here, to not only to make Italy known in Norway with its many art and cultural things and projects, but also to get the two countries closer to each other. So thank you all, thank you Claudio, and thank you Martin, and thank you all for coming, and have a nice evening.